boys and girls, I look a little bit different today, don't I? Well, I'm not trying to pick on anybody or rob a bank or anything. I am wearing a mask because of the COVID outbreak. And Miss Rhonda is kind enough to be filming this for us. And she's wearing a mask and I'm wearing a mask because we're so close to one another. So we want to let you know that we want you to be safe too. And when you go to places and you're close to people, it's best to wear our masks so that we can be safe and stay healthy. So today we have a story about Martin Luther King because this weekend we are celebrating his birthday. He was devoted to teaching people about equal rights and fair treatment of one another. And his spirit has moved many of us, and his spirit continues to grow. So today our story is a picture book of Martin Luther King Jr. by David A. Adler and illustrated by Robert Casella. We hope you enjoy our story. Let's read together.
Martin Luther King Jr. was one of America's great leaders. He was a powerful speaker, and he spoke out against laws which kept black people out of many schools and jobs. He led protests and marches demanding fair laws for all people. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia. Martin's father was a pastor. His mother had been a teacher. Martin had an older sister, Willie Christine, and a younger brother, Alfred Daniel. Young Martin liked to play baseball, football, and basketball. He liked to ride his bicycle and to sing. He often sang in his father's church. Young Martin played in his backyard with his friends. One day he was told that two of his friends would no longer play with him because they were white and he was black. Martin cried. He didn't understand why the color of his skin should matter to anyone. Martin's mother told him that many years ago, black people were brought in chains to America and sold as slaves. She told him that long before Martin was born, the slaves had been set free. However, there were still some people who did not treat black people fairly. In Atlanta, where Martin lived, and elsewhere in the United States, there were white-only signs. Black people were not allowed in some parks, pools, hotels, restaurants, and even schools. Blacks were kept out of many jobs. Martin learned to read at home before he was old enough to start school. All through his childhood, he read books about black leaders. Martin was a good student. He finished high school 2 years early and was just 15 when he entered Morehouse College in Atlanta. At college, Martin decided to become a minister. After Martin was graduated from Morehouse, he studied for a doctorate at Boston University. While he was there, he met Coretta Scott. She was studying music. They fell in love and married. In 1954, Martin Luther King Jr. began his first job as a pastor in Montgomery, Alabama. The next year, Rosa Parks, a black woman, was arrested in Montgomery. She had been sitting just behind the white-only section on a bus. When all the seats in that section were taken, the driver told her to get up so a white man could have her seat. Rosa Parks refused. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led a protest. Blacks throughout the city refused to ride the buses. Dr. King said, "There comes a time when people get tired of being kicked out." One night, while Dr. King was at a meeting, someone threw a bomb into his house. Martin's followers were angry. They wanted to fight. Martin told them to go home peacefully. "We must love our white brothers," he said. "We must meet hate with love." The bus protest lasted almost a year. When it ended, there were no more white-only sections on buses. Dr. King decided to move back to Atlanta in 1960. There, he continued to lead peaceful protests against white-only waiting rooms, lunch counters, and restrooms. He led many marches for freedom. In 1963, Dr. King led the biggest march of all, the March on Washington. More than 200,000 black and white people followed him. "I have a dream," he said in his speech. "I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." The next year, in 1964, Dr. King was awarded one of the greatest honors any person can win, the Nobel Peace Prize. The country was changing. New laws were passed. Blacks could go to the same schools as whites. They could go to the same stores, restaurants, and hotels. White-only signs were against the law. Dr. King told his followers to protest peacefully, but there were some riots and some violence. Then, in April 1968, Dr. King went to Memphis, Tennessee. He planned to march so black and white garbage workers would get the same pay for the same work. On April 4th in Memphis, Dr. King stood outside his motel room. Another man, James Earl Ray, was hiding nearby. He pointed a rifle at Dr. King. He fired the gun. An hour later, Dr. King was dead. Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed of a world free of hate, prejudice, and violence. Carved on the stone which marks his grave are the words, "I am free at last."
Boys and girls, I hope you've enjoyed our story today about Martin Luther King. We know that he was a wonderful person who believed in and was dedicated to teaching the philosophy and the actions of being fair to all people and all people having equal rights. Even as a child, he wanted to play fairly. He had his hobbies of playing ball and playing games with other boys and girls, and he was taught to be fair, not to cheat, and to enjoy his hobbies. So as he got older, we know that he dedicated his life to making certain that that carried on, that he wanted people and everyone to be treated fairly, all people of the earth, no matter from what walks of life. So we definitely need to remember him because he deserves credit for all the wonderful things that he has done throughout the years. And in his memory, we need to remember him because his spirit moves on. Thank you so much. We have some books with us today that you can get if you want to know more about Dr. Martin Luther King. My Uncle Martin's Big Heart, I Have a Dream, My Brother Martin, My Daddy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and this one in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King. So boys and girls, we want you to know that all these are available as well as online services. And we want you to remember to, don't forget, read, read, read.